Okay, we'll get started now. Welcome, everyone. My name is Raja Iqbal. I'm this Chief Data Scientist for Data Science Dojo. So the meetup is our public outreach effort. Think of this as more of we are managing communities, and now in 8 cities globally. The purpose is really to educate people in data science. Any of you who wants to come in and talk about it, talk about anything related to data science or AI or machine learning or anything in that realm. We try to bring speakers in from outside academia, industry. Austin is not one of the most active meetup groups that we have because we are not based locally. We are based in Seattle. So what we try to do is whenever we are here for our week-long training, we would actually organize a meetup just on any topic of general interest. So this is one of the new areas or new talks that we have. And the idea is for the talk is that in general, we see all this data science and machine learning and AI buzz all over. A lot of data is being gathered in pretty much in any area, any walk of life. But we don't see the progress that we are seeing in the commercial applications. We don't see as much progress, even though despite there's a lot of potential in the social good aspect. So this is one of those things that we wanted to talk about. This is a brand new talk. So we'll basically present our thoughts on this and open to discussion. I mean, so what do you think can be done in social good? How can we improve and improve as a society or do things that help the society? So what we're going to do here is we will start with a general idea of what is happening around us. Very quickly, a very quick overview. I don't need to lecture you on what is happening in the commercial space and our personal lives in terms of AI and machine learning. We will go and briefly mention what is possible in what can be considered social good using AI. Then we'll talk about why there is this sudden interest in AI. Suddenly, what happened? I mean, so these techniques and everything has been around for a long time. What is the reason? What was the main catalyst for this AI buzz around us? And then we will talk about some of the ethical and legal aspects of potentially what could go wrong if we don't do AIs responsibly. Because as in the training, what I talk to people about is that we have to be socially responsible when we are building these machine learning models and when we're using AI. It sounds like fun that I'm building a predictive model, but if the predictive model is impacting someone else's life, it can cost someone their freedom, someone's life. I mean, it can cost someone money, right? So then I have a social responsibility to build models that doesn't hurt the society and doesn't hurt people. Whether there are legal implications or not, I still have a social responsibility because I can be on the receiving side of this someday. Okay? So that's the general idea of the talk. So as you can see, it is already part of our daily lives. I mean, so whether and we won't get into the debate of what is AI and what is machine learning. We'll spend the next an hour spent on like, is this AI or is this machine learning? We're not getting there. But in general, this broader set of techniques, call them AI, machine learning, or data science, we see this all the time. And if you look at this, if pretty much many applications, right, we see them around us. If I have some symptoms, I can go and quickly search. And pretty much before I go to the doctor, I have a fairly good idea what's going on. Really. This is how sophisticated these systems are now. If you look at this, more applications based on what I've been tweeting about, based on who I have been following, based on what tweets I have looked at, I can get recommended some groups, some who to follow, Facebook friends, LinkedIn, all of this is happening, right? Facebook is, they claim that they can recognize faces better than humans. Once again, I won't get into the debate, this debate how they're doing it. But again, this is happening all around us. If you're driving in a car, if you, for those of us who own a Tesla or some other cars, we are talking about this self-driving mode now. A lot has been going on. But if I asked you, is that, if you look at this, I mean, what are data scientists or machine learning engineers or AI folks, what are they doing? We are basically suggesting people what, like, click on this ad, go to this website, make people click on ads, predict customer churn, right? Pretty much anything that involves making money is happening right now, right? AI is mainly being used for commercial applications. But what about if you think about any of these applications? This is, AI is not only, or should not only be about those commercial applications. What about any of these applications? Let's say if I asked you, criminal justice system, can we do something about people not getting in trouble? Can we? Anyone knows of any application? Do we think, can we intervene so people don't get in jail? Like, we stop them before they even land in the situation that gets them in jail. Any thoughts around this? So who gets in trouble with law?
Well, there are studies that show that early childhood education, stronger early childhood education can help.
Okay, stronger childhood education. If I am someone who's working on public policy, if my data analysis or my understanding of data, if it tells me that this is the case, I can make some policies around that, right? What about people who are out of jobs, or people in homeless shelters, people in landing in ER rooms? Do you think someone who's going to be in trouble with law, maybe a few months later or maybe a few years later, can we do some, can we predict in advance that this person is at a risk of getting in trouble with law? Do we believe that that is possible? Let's first ask this question. Do we believe? And I think I'm assuming that some of us, or if not most of us, have some understanding of what is machine learning capable of. For instance, if Netflix can predict, I may like this video, the propensity to watch this video, can some researcher or can some economist or public policy specialist, can they predict that this person may want to commit a crime? Is it possible? Yeah, and you wanted to add something.
Police forces that are already doing that, there's already civil liberty concerns about cops showing up at people's doors. So
I am actually going, I am actually proposing something else, because that is a dangerous slope as a society, right? That's a slippery slope as a society. Because what predictive policing is, basically this person might commit a crime, go and apprehend them. I'm actually taking one step back further, before they even get in trouble, right? Or they are likely to commit a crime or anything. They are leading to that direction. So you can intervene, help them, maybe educate them, maybe find ways to give them employment opportunities. Yes.
I mean, they've used this technique, I know, a bit in like some states where there's been a lot of funding cuts for police forces. So they've been like identifying areas, not people, but areas and neighborhoods where there's increased crime, and they've been able to like target patrols on that. But, I mean, that's like when you're targeting a person, I think it comes down to a very ethical and moral debate as to
absolutely.
What that, not even identifying them, how you're identifying them, and then what the steps are following them. if it's arresting people preemptively, there's a lot of sci-fis that have a lot of, we've seen that in the movies, and that doesn't go a good way.
Yeah.
But you can certainly identify a set of patterns that are like a trend among people who have been committed crimes.
Definitely. And towards the end of the presentation, I have this ethical dilemmas or ethical and the responsibilities when building a model. So I have that. I will address those concerns definitely, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say that even if you're trying to help a specific person, the privacy implications of the data you need to make that decision are quite serious.
Certainly. All of those are genuine and valid concerns, right? Yes.
And this is probably also not down the route that you want to go, but historically in America, when slavery was abolished, right, there was a big movement into how do we imprison as many African American people so that we can keep them as slaves, because if they're in prison, they can be slaves. Okay, I digress. Anyway, because of the historical context of where we are today and how we got to where we are, if you take that data and you teach an algorithm how to identify people, it's going to identify a bunch of African American people.
Certainly.
Right? And so there's problems with, like, could we do it? Sure, it's mathematically correct. But I don't know, I don't know.
Absolutely right. So, and as I said, all of those constraints and concerns, we'll talk about them. We got into this like within 5 minutes of getting the talk started, unfortunately. But I will definitely talk about because this is absolutely critical for people who are building machine learning models to understand that what kind of responsibility. It's a big responsibility for all of us. So I will actually talk about, address those, definitely, yeah.
So, I feel one reason here I'm interested in how it's a lot easier to make a predictive model than it is to know exactly what you should do with the results. And I see too many people, going, straight down the path of making a predictive model, and they don't have a plan, or not a good one anyway, what they're going to do with the results. I feel that you would solve a lot of problems if, let's say, you knew what you need to do to prevent someone from becoming incarcerated, and then used a data science to identify those people so you can get them into that program. Okay, that's ethical. But if the police are just automating profiling, what you're going to do is just repeat history, because the model is going to be trained on what's been happening on the past, and then it's going to encourage you to do more of it. And so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So let me address this very quickly, right? So spot on, right? So I think when you build these kind of models, or when you try to understand this, I think, as pointed out, it was it depends upon what is this intervention. If it is to arrest people or apprehend people, that's a different story, right? But if you are actually sincerely trying to actually address the issue, right? So I think we had this discussion, we have this training going on during the day exactly about the same thing, that if it is about predicting crime, I would be willing to lose my job, but I would not at least I would not use race as a predictor, even if I know it is a predictor, right? Because there are many other underlying reasons. Race may not be the underlying reason. There may be some other factors that led to this that may be impacting this. But if it is about helping or devising some public policy so we get out of this mess, that's a different story. In that case, use any features that you can. Go ahead and use the features so you can actually go and help people. Right? So it depends upon what are you going to do with, as you pointed out, what do you plan to do with those predictions? If you're planning to, as I said, if you apprehend them, you collect more data around that, And basically, it's a downward spiral. But if the plan is to go and fix the situation without actually getting them in trouble with law, that actually changes the perspective completely. So I will get into that towards the end. But all of these are actually very valid concerns. Absolutely valid. What about education? Anyone can think of any social good applications for education?
There's a lot of Civitas Learning in town does software for predictive learning on churn in students. So particularly for community colleges, they work with colleges to predict churn, to intervene before students drop out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so you can certainly, all of us would agree that students who drop out, there must be some reason, right? That there may be some socioeconomic reasons behind a student dropping out, right? So as a matter of fact, I mean, so it is actually on the borderline of commercial application, because many colleges they are now using predictive models, because when a student drops out, they lose money, right? So they are actually building predictive models to identify those students so they can intervene and then help them stay. But I think there's nothing wrong about it. Great, right? At least those students, they get to finish college, right? So absolutely, right? So even if it is commercial, it's a great example of some commercial application that is also helping society, right? Any other things? I think, yeah, please go ahead.
You can build models that adapt to the specific student, right? Focus on their strengths or weaknesses and help that individual specifically.
Yeah, just like personalized healthcare, right? There's the concept of personalized healthcare is just like personalized learning plan, right? So, yep. Yeah.
Something similar. Every people have different way to learn. I can be more visible, you more mnemonic, some other more logic. So we can reach the same target in different way, and this can be predicted.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
I think sometimes you look at a university curriculum for a certain degree or program or focus area, and they seem like they're 5 or 10 years out of sync with where you would want them to be and kind of expect them to be. And so I think even actually using machine learning to identify even predictively how they could better shape their programs, and by taking their data, but also industry data, data from outside. And I think that being a tool, rather than saying the student, let me focus on the student. Frankly, a lot of the times people leave, it might be personal, financial trouble, a lot of reasons. But some of the reasons is the program is just not that good, and it doesn't have as direct a path as ideally it could to achieving these students' goals. So I think actually using it to improve the program design.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
I taught math at a community college, and if students miss a week or two for personal reasons, particularly in a rough area, they would just be lost. And we were told to stop teaching, use the program alex.com. I don't know if it uses machine learning, but it's individualized. We went from a 32% pass rate to 71 in one semester.
Oh, wow.
And the students had better command of the mathematics because they quizzed them individually. And again, I don't know if it was machine learning. It probably had some aspect of that. That individualized aspect changed everything for these students, and they were empowered because they felt they were doing it themselves. I quit my job because I saw the writing on the wall. I wasn't allowed to teach anymore. But this machine learning or some aspect of it actually taught these remedial students better than we ever could.
Okay, that's a great example. Yeah, Monica.
In Colorado, there is schools are rated by codes, and there could be consequences if you get bad ratings in a row, like in closure. And there are limited resources, so predicting a school that is gonna get a bad rating in advance based on teacher retention or like a lot of characteristics of the school can make the district to put additional money and support in that particular school to avoid like a future closure that is usually very hard for the community of the school. So that's, I guess, that's an application. It's not directly the student, but it's more like the macro level of the school.
Okay, that's a great example. Any other examples, say from any of these areas? Anyone knows any examples?
So I'm thinking personalized care, but there's a big issue regarding access to medical records, right? So training models are not it's not that easy to do. So I think this should be a way. I think the big problem that has to be solved in the personalized care is access to data by machine learning researchers. So I know that there are some companies in the pharmaceutical, some pharma companies that are doing work on this, but I think this can benefit a lot of personalized care if better access to data is.
But you do understand the flip side too, right? Because if that data gets in the hands of the health insurance companies, they probably would refuse to insure a lot of people, right? So yeah, but point taken, yes.
Opt-in way, something that's available to the patient, so he can share them and withdraw access to data at any time would be something that would solve this kind of an issue. And I was thinking education as well. One of the ways we are learning right now at general level is that we focus on some separate topics. So maybe we focus on mathematics or computer science or biology or I don't know, physics, right? So we become specialists in those, but to create something, a larger goal, we have to transcend these disciplines, right? So maybe a model that would explain the trajectory across topics to reach a certain goal would be something that would work very well for future students.
Okay, that's great. Okay, let's. This is a great discussion. Let's move on. Think about this problem right now. So, if you look at this, so this is a recent stat. 48 million people that suffer from foodborne illnesses, right? Now you have this many hospitalizations. This is the cost to the healthcare system. It seems like a big deal, like a major problem. Now, this is just a prototype. I mean, I don't know if this was ever implemented, but great ideas start like this. Look at this here, right? This I think it was University of New Mexico, if I'm remembering correctly. So they actually came up with this app. You're basically from within any tweets that are sent out, they come with a geotag, their location. And now if you are analyzing tweets from certain users, can we, people tend to tweet about pretty much anything. It's Twitter, right? So like you're talking about everything, right? I'm eating right now. I'm left, and I'm sick. I'm in a hospital. I'm in an ER, right? I came out of ER. So what they decided to do was they said that we are going to analyze these tweets, and basically, before you issue a citation to a restaurant based on this person ate in this restaurant and then later on was sick. And you can, they started tracking down issuing citations helped by this data from the tweets. And as a result of this, their actual citations and for violation as a result of inspection, that rate went up. They were able to track down those restaurants that are causing this problem more effectively. Very simple application. I mean, for those of you who may not be aware of this, right? So getting Twitter, getting the tweets from using the Twitter API, not a big deal. Analyzing like this, not a big deal. It is just that there is a lot of opportunity, a lot of low-hanging fruit that is out there that you can just go and try to tackle. Opportunity in healthcare. These are numbers by McKinsey. In healthcare, there can be different areas of improvement. You can actually have basically at different levels of you can have interventions at different levels or different stages rather. You can basically, when someone is in a hospital already, how do you improve the quality of healthcare? And how do you match them with the right healthcare provider? Can we target people, and based on their lifestyle, can we make some recommendations there? And also the electronic medical records and all the all the billing system and all the prescriptions, the electronic medical records, can we utilize them and make the healthcare system more efficient? There is, and if you look at these are, of course, all estimated numbers, but this is the size of opportunity in all of these areas. These are big numbers, right? And you can, whether the numbers are, these are estimates, right? Whether the numbers are accurately reflecting or not, all of us would agree that there must be a sizable opportunity in all of these areas. There is this, one of the hospitals in New York, it implemented this system that before, think about this. When we go to a doctor may order a test. Or doctor may order a test but not order another test that must have been requested, right? So do you think if there is a clinical support, decision support system, when I'm ordering or requesting this test on a patient, do you think it is possible that this system flags me? Hey, this based on the history of the patient, based on the prescription, based on the medication, based on the other tests that are in the past that patient has gone through, or the tests that we are requesting right now for the patient, some diagnostic tests, or any course of treatment. Do you think we can map it to not just the patient itself, but other patients who have gone through similar course? So this hospital reported 7.3% saving. It should be decreased, not increase. It should 7.3% decrease on average in individual healthcare cost per patient. Can you manage your infrastructure more efficiently? Just an example, the city of Barcelona, they decided that they will be using, call it AI, call it machine learning, call it data science, again, all of the same areas. They started using this advanced analytics techniques, their IoT devices, and then machine learning and data analysis and all their dashboards. And reportedly saved $75 million and 47,000 jobs, new jobs created as a result of this. And sometimes, we are concerned about that all of this will result in loss of jobs, but definitely when you are doing things efficiently, it actually creates more opportunities, other opportunities for employment. There is, in agriculture, there is the South African startup that uses satellite imagery and to monitor health of crops. You're basically satellite imagery and drone imagery. You're basically going around and trying to see if the crop is going to be impacted soon or is already impacted or not. Does anyone in the audience, do they know of any actual working application of data science, machine learning, AI in social good? Are there any? Yes?
About the irrigation of farm.
Mm-hmm.
So we can save a lot of water and have the result.
It is one of the easiest things to achieve, right? So basically, you're not watering them just based on schedule. It's based on sensing the humidity and when they actually need water, as opposed to it's a fixed time that 5 p.m. or 5 a.m. in the morning we are going to just go and water them, right? Sensors are cheap.
Based on weather.
Based on weather as well, yeah. If we know that it is going to rain in 6 hours, even though they need humidity or even though they need water, we can decide not to, right? Yes.
I would say a lot of this depends on how you define social good to an extent, right?
Sure, and that is actually, as I said, I think when we go back, it's a very interesting question, right? What is social good? So I would actually consider that college dropout or college risk of dropping out prediction algorithms, I would consider them social good, right? Because they are commercial applications, but at the end of the day, you are sort of helping society in some way, right?
So can we say self-driving cars then are social good? 40,000 people a year dying in the US, a million people worldwide a year dying in car accidents, right?
It depends upon, so I mean, again, we will go in, then Netflix is probably also social good. It helps me relax, right? So, or I enjoy my time with my friends and my family, right? So yeah, so open to, yeah, Matt, do you have?
One nuance of the definition would be think about the potential for harm. A lot of times when people are raising the questions of social good, it's because we always think about the innovative applications we deliver, but we don't often think about some of the side effects or harm they might cause. And so I think that's usually where this often gets positioned. So for instance, crops versus Facebook, they both are doing good, useful things for people, but are there potential harms we haven't really thought about in providing this new ability?
Okay, so let me ask, I'm also learning right now, right? So what would you think would be, what are a few applications that would be strictly considered social good? Oh, yes.
You know, traditionally, farmers apply pesticides, you know, in a blanket coverage like a crop duster plane flying over the fields. And that has all kinds of problems that go with it. Like, for instance, a farmer may apply this pesticide, but he's also planted this type of corn, for example, that's very resistant to that pesticide. But the farmer next to him hasn't. So the drift of the pesticide, you know, he's applying it liberally because he's not worried about his crops, but it's killing his neighbor's crops. So using machine learning and training the models on images, they now have machines that will actually apply pesticide on specific weeds as the machine goes across the field. So it's only putting the pesticide on the weed, very, very small doses, but very, very precisely targeted. So it solves a lot of problems there, and there's a whole lot less pesticide in the environment.
Okay, that's great.
Or weed killer.
Again, that's great. Do you think it is social good or not? I mean, far back, yeah.
I would say it is
Oh, okay,
a
great.
variant of social good.
Okay, yeah, great. And Matt, you had something to add?
Well, I mean, I think on one hand, there's some notion that if a nonprofit or some benevolent person is doing it, therefore they're doing good. But those people can also cause inadvertent harm as well. I mean, so I was just looking, one of my colleagues had written this line, you know, Kratzberg's first law of technology. Technology is neither good nor bad, or it's neutral. I think the framing of things as entirely good is problematic.
Okay.
So I think the main thing I think about when really people are talking about this is they're trying to get the notion that often well-meaning innovators are providing new technology capabilities, but not thinking through, like for instance, in terms of the criminal sentencing, ProPublica ran this great article about hidden bias in those algorithms. Or there was a major news story lately about a university that was predicting which students would drop out and then was pushing them out, basically so they wouldn't hurt their numbers. So these technologies can be used or misused, and people might explicitly intend them to cause harm, but a lot of times there's just implicit bias they don't know about, or consequences because it's a complex system that we don't anticipate.
And a lot of times this does happen, right? So I think I read this on your website, actually, that Jurassic Park quote, right? So someone was, okay, you may not be aware, I was reading this. So I think something to the effect that when the scientists who were working on that, getting those dinosaurs out, so someone said, you have been thinking all this time that whether you could do this or not, but the question that you should ask is whether you should do this or not, right? So it's not basically, many times you cause unintentional harm, right? You don't even realize that what you're trying to do can have unintended consequences, and it can actually do more harm than good, right?
Regarding this, you mentioned earlier the access and privacy, right? So because researchers don't have access to data, and actually no one except for the government or medical staff don't have access to data, but they don't know how to understand it, how to create better medicines. Not doing and not having access to the data creates casualties by the day, right? So just because people are not researching a disease does not mean that the people are not dying, right? So by not doing something, you can also do wrong. So it's not just when you do something you can cause harm, but not doing something can also cause harm.
And once again, I think we will be talking about many of those issues, and this is a please go ahead.
I think that the best person, the best people to answer, am I being hurt or not, are the people that are actually the subjects of those actions, right? So if you're saying that a patient should a patient's data should be allowed to be public, I think we should first ask the patient whether he wants it public or not, as he's being given enough information to understand what's he giving away, right?
Are you talking about this being a general availability of all the data about entire population, or specific? Let's say I have a rare form of cancer, and then I'm okay with sharing my data, as opposed to everyone in the population.
I'll give you a real life example. I did some work on processing data regarding oncology, right? So finding patterns across multiple publications and papers on oncology to find common patterns that are not immediately visible, right? But what I found was that most of the information was not with the researchers or the physicians. It was mostly with the patients, and they were willing to share it as long as they would get at least the hope of a better treatment, right? But no one was asking them.
People who were being treated for that kind of disease, because if I get a show of hands here, I'm pretty sure that most people would not be okay with sharing their healthcare data in public, whether they have something.
Not public,
Yeah.
but with
because and I totally get that. My worry is, for-profit companies, they might not actually use it in the way that we expect them to use it, right? So, and we know it. I mean, we have seen it many times, especially, I mean, in this case, healthcare data. I can tell you, if you give me healthcare data for like that many people, I can tell you, I mean, within certain degree of confidence when the person has died and how they are going to, what kind of disease they are likely to develop, right? So it is, once again, I mean, we are still figuring out. I think as a society, we are still in that stage. We are figuring out how to actually handle this. Data gathering is easy, data storage is easy, transmission is easy, but what do we do next? I mean, what are the laws? I mean, how do we protect? So I'm all for it, but there should be laws and regulations around any breach, right? And that's I think that's the concern. Otherwise, I totally get that, right? I mean, so if the insurance companies can predict what is going to happen to the person denying insurance, we can flip the problem and we can say, yeah, I mean, researchers can also predict and they can actually intervene and then try to help the person, right? It is actually the same problem being solved from two different angles, right? And we want people to approach it from that side, once again, what we will consider the social good side, as opposed to like something with a pure commercial intent. Yes, you wanted to add something? Yeah.
This could scare, but we can use AI also to predict if an application is good or not.
AI to predict if an application is good or not. I think,
I don't know.
do you really need AI for that? I think you just need some maybe real intelligence, or maybe not intelligence, some common sense, right? I mean, my criteria is anything that I don't like to be done to myself, I won't do it to anyone else, right? I mean, so that's probably, I mean, it will eliminate most of the 90%, 95% of the things, right? If I don't want anyone to read my email, right? I won't go and snoop on my customers' emails, right? So if I don't want to see, you can actually go and get any information about anyone out there, right? So I think you don't need AI, or do you, for this? Yeah, because this is more as a, and also as a society, right? So something that may be acceptable in this society may not be acceptable maybe another country or another place.
How you can define who's the subject that can define this? Objectively, this is most objective way, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. So,
It is very difficult. I agree with the challenges that you've raised. So you have proposed solutions? Do you have proposed solutions?
I
Totally
don't
agree with the
actually.
challenge.
I don't, because and there is a slide that where I will talk about. We are still figuring out what to do with this. We are gathering data. We are gathering so much data. Facebook is gathering so much data about us. Google has so much data about us. What are we doing as a society to actually protect the citizens?
Yeah, we're not much, but it's actually the industry, that is most often the people who would come up with the right answer. It's actually the people like this, or the, sometimes academia, but it's this kind of group that would start to formulate what those ideas are, and get some visibility to them.
But don't you think there's a conflict of interest there? If you leave it to industry, don't you think that there is going to be a conflict of interest?
But when I say that, even though we're here for AI for social good, so there's possibly an inherent bias in some, for the people who walked in the room, we're still part of the industry, unless you're purely working on philanthropic efforts, and you always will, then you're part of the industry. So I'm saying that this group.
Absolutely. But the scale at which, and again, it's a philosophical debate, or maybe like it's a longer debate. But the scale at which we are talking about, it's not just me and you who are actually working as like workers in the industry. It has to come from the leadership of the industry, like thought leaders who are actually going to be aware of the consequence. Maybe they are aware of the consequences, but still they have. Let me put it this way. With all due respect, do you think Mark Zuckerberg is going to just close down Facebook just because so it's because there is. I see there is a clear conflict of interest, right?
No, but I think even if you look at some of the internal emails on the touchy topics that have been released, from the traffic inside Google, you see it's us that are in those conversations, spawning this internal debate that eventually ends up being, the formulation.
Okay. Absolutely, I think I would agree there, right? So yes,
blogs, I think we play a big role in that. And I think it's, frankly, I really am happy to see the leadership of Apple step up and say, data privacy, doggone it. That's amazing. And Microsoft is also, wanting to get ahead of it. But I don't think, if we I don't think we should just let those, I think that's awesome. And I'm really happy about it, but I don't think we should stand by and just say.
And let me play devil's advocate here, right? So Apple would do it because they don't monetize much on their data. I would actually wait for the day when Google and Facebook actually come in and say, data privacy, what are they going to do after that, right? They are done after that, right?
Apple has made a choice not to do that. It's not that they can't do it, it's that they don't do it, right? So they can monetize their data and they're not doing it. They have a huge data operation. They're not monetizing it. So.
Point taken, yeah.
It would be lovely for the companies were out there to be good in general, but we're talking about companies that, the large ones, at least for the most part, are public companies, and they are primarily answering to shareholders. And what are the priorities of their shareholders?
Yeah, but I think data protection, I think even if you look at, just looking at what's going on in the EU and the multi-billion-dollar fines that are landing, the idea of getting ahead of, Microsoft's in the game purely to get ahead of it and try and shape policy that isn't as damaging as what's in the EU. It's not.
Yeah, EU is a good example, right? So I was personally, GDPR was a pain in the neck for us, really. But I was happy that someone actually decided to do it, right? It was very difficult to actually become compliant. But as someone who thinks that the society has to worry about this, yeah, I mean, that was a good thing, right? So people have to be responsible. When they use someone's data, they have to be responsible. So yeah. But I think it was probably, I don't know how much industry was involved. I think it came down from the government and the lawmakers who actually forced certain things upon industry. And US companies were, of course, impacted as well. Okay? So let me quickly, I think I'm not even halfway through this slide deck. So why this AI buzz suddenly? What happened? And as much as we would like to believe, it doesn't have much to do with any innovation on the algorithm side in machine learning and AI space. We have started rebranding things. Pattern recognition now was being called machine learning, and now it is called artificial intelligence, right? So, but basically, what happened was that, and this is an example, right? So. YouTube actually gathers 500 hours of video every 60 seconds. You have 3.3 million posts posted on Facebook in 60 seconds. So we are talking about things at this scale. And why did this start happening? I will actually let me quickly talk about this, right? So we are living in this time where data is being produced, like all of us, actually right now as we speak, at least all of us, we have at least one, all of us are walking sources of data right now. If we have a smartphone in our pocket, we are sending data somewhere. Not just one place, but if you have Google Maps installed, you're sending some data to Google Maps. If you have a different app installed, another app, so your location, your conversation, right? So this is happening. So data is being produced at an unprecedented scale. All of these production data transmission and collection has become easier. Storage and all of those storage is cheaper, and then data processing, thanks to software as a service, it has become cheaper. If you look at this here, in 1991, 1 million transistors would cost you $222. Now it costs 6 cents. This is your transistor. For those of you who may not know, I mean, it's a unit. You do computation on your computers. Transistor is the unit of that, right? Data storage. If you remember your hard drives from a while ago, 1 gigabyte, 569. Now, 1 cent. You can store data pretty cheap in the cloud, or even hard drives are becoming cheaper. Data transfer. Take a look at the costs. So what happened is, also, the APIs and SDKs, you can actually get a sensor for a few cents or $1 or $2 that can actually send a lot of data, any humidity readings, any temperature readings, connected to Wi-Fi. You can connect it to Bluetooth, right? Data transmission and collection and storage, it's all becoming cheaper. You cannot live in a better time if you're talking about data analysis, right? So you can pretty much gather every single bit of data generated around your business, around your application. So if you look at this, you have a wide variety and large volumes of data that are being generated. The IT infrastructure is cheaper. SaaS is available for building machine learning models. You can literally build machine learning models within a few clicks. APIs and SDKs are easy to use. All of this has actually caused AI and machine learning to be possible. It is not some radical fundamental innovation on the algorithms and the machine learning side. It is basically neural networks, right? They were out of fashion like 15, 20 years ago, or not out of fashion, but really it's too compute intensive, it won't work. and then we rebranded them as deep learning, and now nobody knows that we used to once call them neural networks, right? That is what is happening, right? So all of this has made this possible. Now, talking about the potential pitfalls, what are the potential problems when you can run into if you want to do AI responsibly, socially responsibly? What are the potential problems? What are some ethics that you have to consider? First point that I think we mentioned just now, that we still, I mean, it's an emerging discipline. We are not sure exactly. There's no common understanding what is right or what is wrong. I mean, so, well, we can, in this room, we can probably argue and debate or maybe convince each other, but there is no industry-wide definition of what is OK and what is not OK. If there is a law around it, of course, GDPR is the case. They introduced this law in European Union, and we are a company based in the US, but we have customers in Europe, and we had to comply with GDPR or face fines. So that is something that was enforced by law. But how do you define? I mean, even within us who came into this room with the same idea that, yeah, AI should be used for social good, probably we disagree on certain definitions here, right? What exactly is the right thing to do? Then, when you are collecting some data, so let's say, I mean, we can talk about this, right? So, for instance, maybe in some societies or in some countries, people might be OK with having cameras all around. But another society might say, we don't want to turn into a police state. We don't want to have surveillance all the time. So how do we actually understand? I mean, how do we obtain consent from citizens? Then there is a lot of data that you gather that is personally identifiable, especially healthcare, right? Maybe we can have some procedures and policies and regulations around it. When the healthcare data becomes available, there is absolutely no way to reverse engineer who this data belongs to. I've worked for a search engine, so at Microsoft, and there was a team that would scrub any PII. So we could see what is happening in the session, but we could not see actually who is the one who issued the query. Was it possible? Yes, it was possible. But there are legal implications to that, right? They would actually, any name or any phone numbers, anything, even if anyone who searches for a name, unless it is a celebrity, that would be scrubbed from the query, because sometimes people might be searching for their own name. Anything that can help me reconstruct the identity of the person was off limits. Then authentication and user and control access, right? If anyone does not have any business in accessing this data source, they should stay out of that business for certain data sets. And also precautions against building models with inherent bias and unbalanced data, something that we got into very early in the talk, right? We started with these kind of ideas. So what are some of the dilemmas, right? So this is, if data set ties crime, homelessness, or terrorism to a certain demographic, what would you do? And we'll ask these questions. We are not going to address this question right in this room, but these are all valid questions. Granting parole using predictive models. And I was actually not very pleased. I actually saw that this has already started happening. And should we be troubled as a society if this starts happening? Now, does availability of data, does it imply consent? If the data is somewhere, right, should I go and start harvesting? Or I know that I can get my hands on the data. It is stored somewhere. Should I go and get it and start using it for my own personal purposes or my commercial interest or any other interest for that matter? They did not say I don't consent to use. Does that mean I can use it? if I feel that that they might not like it after the fact. You can think about this, your predictive model. It gives you some degree of confidence about whether you should go and strike a place. How do you decide that balance between false positives and false negatives? Who's responsible for wrong diagnosis? If, let's say, we have a predictive model that is deciding whether someone has a disease or not, who's responsible? And for that matter, let's say US, in United States, we approve these self-driving cars. A self-driving car goes and hits a pedestrian. Who's responsible? Should we sue the driver? Should we sue the car? Should we go and sue Elon Musk? I mean, who's responsible? So there are many things that we are, as a society, we still don't understand what is going to happen. And people who are going to make laws, they don't know yet. These are not easy topics to understand, right? So if you go and try to explain false positive and false negative rate and the implications of precision and recall to a lawmaker, I think it will be difficult, right? Because even those who want to understand this, it's difficult for them to understand it, right? So these are not easy things to understand. What can happen? Right? So if you look at this, there are different stages of data processing. So there can be problems in the acquisition stage, or preparation and modeling and interpretation stage. So acquisition stage, I can actually be spying on people. I don't have consent to obtain data. There are ethical problems that can happen around that stage of this whole life cycle of using data. Then preparation. What is the data that we should consider, and what is the data we should not consider for modeling? And when we're preparing data, should we understand if there is any skew in data or not? How should we anonymize the data? We have gathered the data, that's fine. We have collected all the healthcare data because we have collected it. But when we prepare it to hand it over to a medical researcher, what are the things that we should omit? How should we encrypt the data? So it doesn't, how should we secure the data? Then you're talking about modeling. Did we randomize the data for building the model? Did we randomize it correctly or not? And then after that, interpretation. Interpretation can have its own. You can give me some analysis. Maybe another person gets the same analysis, and our conclusions might not be the same based on our inherent biases in our thinking process. This is, I will show this to just make a point here.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
So what is the point here? So we may think that we are objective, right? It is entirely possible that we are very well-intentioned. We want to do good. But still, it is possible that there is something that is glaringly obvious, but we miss that because we were not looking for that. So the video is in a completely different context. But it actually makes a very good point here. I was not looking for it. I won't find it. Okay? So there was this policy that NYPD implemented. And basically, they started this stop and frisk experiment. They started implementing this policy that anyone who looks suspicious and so on, they started based on, of course, some description. And what ended up happening was that there was a lawsuit. Of course, it ended up being a racial discrimination issue. And as we talked about this, right, it basically repeats the previous injustices, and it just perpetuates what has been happening. Then, if you look at this, how many of you have actually read the Facebook terms of, if you are a Facebook user, Facebook terms of agreement that whatever, did you read it before you created a Facebook account? Did you? It was funny because when people were complaining about it, and after that Cambridge Analytica fiasco, people were complaining about it and how can they do it? And did you go and read that? You basically signed up for it. You basically gave them all the right. They were well within, they were doing what you gave them consent for. There was nothing illegal that they were doing. So that's how it is, right? And anyone knows about this experiment that Facebook conducted about impacting emotions? Anyone wants to describe to me? Do you remember the details?
Yeah. They basically took a group of teenagers, right, if I'm not mistaken, and they altered the news feed to see how their emotions would differ in terms of different news showing up on their news feed. And it worked.
Yeah, I think the experiment, it's closed, right? So they were actually conducting this experiment where there's a concept of, just like a clinical trial, there's a concept of A/B testing and online experimentation in online services. What they decided was that they will show two groups of people randomly. If this is all my Facebook user base, I will say, yeah, randomly show this half some positive and upbeat content from their friends. Because when something pops up in my feed, it is actually an algorithm to decide what is it that I would be interested in from my friends, because the amount of stuff that my friends post, I cannot consume that, right? It has to be prioritized. So what they decided was that the recommendation algorithm, it will show things for half of the control group. They will show them the regular stuff, and the people are actually some positive and upbeat content from their friends, and the remaining half or remaining proportion, call them the treatment group, they will show them some negative content. And they actually concluded at the end that people who were shown positive and upbeat content in turn acted positively on Facebook, and then likewise the people who were shown negative content, they actually turned and started acting in the same manner. So is anyone troubled by this? And why would you be troubled by this? What's wrong with this?
The ability to change social behavior and emotions to other emotions on such a large scale is something that we have never, as a society, been have dealt with. So it's quite troubling.
Yeah, I mean, I did actually A/B testing for a long time for Microsoft, but I am personally troubled by this because I've done A/B testing for a living, but this is not an A/B test. I mean, this is more of a psychology, but more of they're treating us there as their guinea pigs, right? But many people would argue, but isn't this what news outlets do? Now, I'm giving you the different point of view. Doesn't this what advertising do? How is it different? Because the idea is to impact people's opinions, right? News channels are doing it all day long. So how do you differentiate between a news channel or a show doing it, or a newspaper ad or TV ad doing it versus Facebook doing it? What's wrong? Yep.
Basically, the content that I see on Facebook are the content interesting for me. So it's not about open mind, but about consolidate my own thought. And the bad thing, if tweaking this content, they can influence me.
The news channels also influence you, right? So they also make you. They can impact your opinion. I mean, you can change your opinion based on what they are telling you, right? I mean, so it happens.
Basically, they show to me what is interesting for me.
Yeah, I think.
Is it an expectation? Like you expect the news to lie to you, you expect advertisers to sell to you,
You
you don't
expect
expect
it
your
now.
friends.
Sure. I think it's more about.
Years
It's,
ago you didn't.
No, now you do.
yeah,
I mean, I
it is
expect-
far more subtle because most people don't even know that this is happening to them. That's my concern was for news channels. At least I know. I mean, I dislike both left and right news channels because I can clearly tell as someone who I may have some political views, but I find certain things in poor taste, even those who are doing the same. I mean, left or right, both news channels are actually. It is not news.
I mean,
It is
because
garbage,
in
right?
the 90s, the news channels went to court and won that they didn't have to tell the truth. People know they lie. Like, I mean, that's not the argument.
Okay.
Well,
Yes,
it's
Monica.
problem because when the celebrities tweet stuff like recommend,
Mhm.
they have to put this is an ad, otherwise it's against. I think I don't know if it's against Twitter's rules or someone's rules or the law. They
Yeah.
have to say this is an ad, so you know that they are trying to sell you something. And
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
that's part of this that you don't know that
Yeah.
we're trying to do that.
Yeah, definitely. But the experiment that they did, it was technically in terms of service. I mean, they were totally within their. They did not cross any line there, legally, ethically. We can discuss, but you and then you. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. What if you presented this in the context of, Facebook is trying to combat cyberbullying, and they want to figure out if there's a way to get people to act more kindly online. And this experiment was a way to see if showing positive content can get people to react more positively. Would you still be troubled by it?
They should have they should have had you in their marketing team because they never gave the spin to it, right? So they never said that. They openly, because they were collaborating with some East Coast, I think some Ivy League school, some researchers. So it was purely a psychology experiment. So they did not say that they were doing it this way. But if they do it this way, absolutely, right? I mean, it's a social good application once again, or unless again, Matt, you would comment here, right? But if there is no other hidden agenda there, if it is purely for helping in cyberbullying, I would be all for it, personally. But
you don't know, right?
and we don't know. That is the
Like,
problem,
you don't know
right?
what they're gonna do with
Because
this. That's why
repeatedly,
you're troubled by it.
many things have happened, and it is hard to trust them anymore.
It's deceptive practice.
Yeah, because I mean, let me put it this way, right? I know people personally, my friends actually, they work for Facebook. These $400,000-$500,000 per year for someone with okay experience, how are they going to afford that if they start becoming this? I mean, so I think it's because they, as I said, it's a conflict of interest situation because they cannot be purely for social good, right? Let me give you the stat, right? Some estimates are that serving one search result on Google, it takes 5 cents. How are they going to fulfill that? I mean, where is the budget going to come from? The data centers after data centers, all the processing costs. How are they going to manage that? Sorry, you had a question.
Yeah, I think, even with the psychology experiment, I just wanted to call back something that you said earlier, because I wanted to really put a pin in it. And you talked about your appreciation for GDPR. And I also appreciated GDPR. It's like, you're damn right, man, we need some protection here for the individual. But part of the GDPR, Facebook would be crucified and be paying billions in penalties, if they played that same experiment now in the EU, because part of the consent that's now required, speaking to what you're talking about, consent, and we all just sign up and don't even read it, for them to do something like this, they would have to be very explicit in consent and give you a long, if you see the examples, this long list of all these different things you specifically sign up with big green and red buttons, right? And so that is an excellent, now how do we actually solve this? If people consent to participate, it's just like a clinical trial or any kind of other research effort, there's nothing wrong with it. But it's the they didn't know, right? It's the secrecy. And so I think there's something to leverage, and even espouse and make available, and frankly, it's all Java, it's all ready to go. You just copy the templates down and you can start using them off the Swiss GDPR website, government website. But I think that's it's a good contribution to a long-term answer.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So you use TV news as an analogy here.
I did not. People actually trying to, because I was uncomfortable, as most of you are. But someone said, but that's what happens. I mean, TV channels are also doing it. So please go ahead.
Right. I mean, I would say that to me personally, it's far more disturbing that we accept that there's no guidelines around how TV news should operate. Versus.
But maybe 10 years later, we will be talking the same way about Facebook. There are no guidelines, right? So that's.
And I mean, it's fair for some of us to say, oh, well, we know it's all garbage, but many people may not think it's garbage.
Absolutely.
There's a big difference in between television and Facebook. If you were to apply the same idea of the Facebook feed to television, is like someone taking the remote out of your hand and just showing you the programs and the shows they want you to see, right? Even though all of the television is skewed, so there's a lot of ideas and a lot of policies that people want to push, you still have the right to choose. Whereas with Facebook, the algorithm is pushing personalized data to you, and it can be this on-off switch between happiness and hate. Right, that's absolutely scary, because that's personal connection.
It is very subtle. It is creepy in the sense because I think it is coming from my friends, and my friends are all about hating candidate A versus hating loving candidate B. I don't even know my friends are talking about. I don't even know that a different point of view exists, right? And I think this is also a good example. I think some of you may have seen this. Facebook had this, I think in different countries, they had this button, I'm voting or I'm a voter, and it would post on their wall, I voted. And not everyone saw this. Not everyone saw this button, right? It was a subset of users who actually got this. And this is, you can see that basically it's a major threat to democracy in any country. You can, and potentially, if they decide, election results can be different, right? So this, I think, as reported, it increased participation by 0.24%, and this was the difference in 2000, Bush versus Gore. Okay. So I think I would have loved to actually go through this, but it's quite late. I would have wanted to actually talk about best practices. I mean, how do you actually be socially responsible when dealing with data, doing anything data, and what are the problems, right? So one, basically professional competence, and the idea was that, you have to be competent. You cannot say that I was ignorant, and ignorance is not an excuse in this, because the models that you're building and the analyses that you're giving, they have an impact on society. You cannot really just give ignorance as an excuse. You have to worry about data representation and other things, right? Data protection and privacy. Equifax, right? Equifax actually I was one of the impactees. I think every third person was impacted. I'm sure some of you might have been. So you go there, and the data has been breached, and now they are offering you more services, and you pay them to put a credit card. Like they turned their incompetence into more money-making opportunity, right? So I mean, I was amazed. As an entrepreneur, I thought that it was brilliant from their side, right? But as a member of the society, I'm troubled. Why are they not, like, why haven't they been held accountable? Because they charge for every report. Then they should pay the price for incompetence as well, right? I mean, they are responsible for making sure that the data is protected. Then clear hypothesis. You should not just have this wishy-washy hypothesis. Yeah, we'll see what happens, and whatever happens, yeah, I knew that this is going to happen, right? You have to have this concrete, clear hypothesis what you're trying to do. And humility. Accept that it is wrong. I mean, I was wrong, right? So don't go about beating around the bush. Yeah, it might have happened because of this, right? So these are some basics that they teach in any basic hypothesis testing lecture, but not very common. Attention to detail and rigor. Quality assurance in testing. Things can go wrong. People have this, I see that people have this unshakable belief in AI, that AI, everything is going to be right. I mean, once AI is in place, and this is actually this, I don't know how many of you actually figured out, like this is an actual conversation Siri. So Siri, you need to do a better job of understanding me. Noted. Yeah, make a note of that. Here is your note. And this is the note. And you must have heard of this Alexa, this bug. Husband and a wife, they were having a conversation, and then in the conversation, somehow they mentioned Alexa. Alexa got triggered, and now, or calling a friend, actually, Alexa called their friend, and the friend is on phone, listening to that conversation, and then came back and told them that this happened. It came to press. Amazon acknowledged that this was a very rare, one in a, 100 million chance that this would happen, but it did happen. So there is, I will close on this. There is this Hippocratic oath that doctors take when they, traditionally doctors take when they become, graduate or, right? So medicine is a centuries-old profession, right? So we have these code of ethics and code of conduct in place for those disciplines. So let's look at this. I mean, what should be a modeler's Hippocratic oath? If I'm someone working in data analysis, what should be my oath? So first thing is, I will remember that I didn't make the world, and it doesn't satisfy my equations. Though I will use models boldly to estimate value, I will not be overly impressed by mathematics. I will never sacrifice reality for elegance without explaining why I have done so. I will not give the people who use my model false comfort about its accuracy. Instead, I will make explicit its assumptions and oversights. I understand that my work may have enormous impact on society and the economy, many of them beyond my comprehension. I will aim to show how my analysis makes life better or more efficient. Okay, thank you.